no.
Well, we finally reached it. Our first Goosebumps sequel, Monster Blood 2, and oh, how I've been dreading it. For one, Monster Blood stands as one of my least favorite books that I've covered thus far for this project, and a lot of that fell into the book's protagonist, Evan Ross, a whiny, entitled brat who acts like he's 4 when he's actually 12. I was hoping maybe there would be a different protagonist in this outing, but nope, Evan's back. For 2, the first Monster Blood seemed to end pretty conclusively, with both the cursed Monster Blood toy and Cerebeth, the sexy cat witch who cursed the Monster Blood, seemingly destroyed. It didn't seem to leave much of a hook for sequels, let alone 3 of them? But here we are, and I'm going to give the book a fair shake. The first Monster Blood was only the 3rd book in the series, and I'm willing to accept the idea of growing pains as R.L. Stine got into the groove of the series. The last handful of books, while most definitely flawed, have felt more consistent in quality than the first dozen or so perhaps Stine learned some lessons, and hey, maybe Evan has chilled out a bit since the first book. "Monster Blood is real!" Evan blurted out angrily. The kids laughed again. Mr. Murphy's expression grew stern, his tiny eyes locked onto Evan's. "Evan, I am a science teacher. You don't expect a science teacher to believe that you found a can of sticky green gunk in a toy store that makes everything grow and grow." "Yes, I do," Evan insisted. "Maybe a science fiction teacher would believe it," Mr. Murphy replied, grinning at his own joke. "Not a science teacher." "Well, you're dumb!" Evan cried. He didn't mean to say it. He knew immediately that he just made a major mistake. Oh, here it goes. So Evan is a new student at this school in Atlanta, and the very first thing he does is tell everyone about his Monster Blood adventure. Most Goosebumps books has the kids conflicted on if they should tell anyone about this spooky shit happening over here, but they know no one will believe them. Meanwhile, here's Evan, walking up to everyone he sees and screaming, "Hey, you want to hear about my dumb slime adventure?" As you can imagine, this hasn't won Evan many friends, and he feels pretty resentful about nobody believing him. It comes up in science class, and we get that exchange where he calls his teacher, Mr. Murphy, dumb. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Mr. Murphy punishes Evan by having him stay after school to clean out the cage of the class's pet hamster, Cuddles. Evan, being the worst human being, hates the little guy, and holy shit, I hate Cuddles! Evan screamed. "I hate that stupid fat hamster!" As everyone stared in amazed horror, Evan ran over to the cage, pulled open the door, and grabbed Cuddles up in one hand. Then, with an easy, graceful motion, he flung the hamster across the room and out the open window. Okay, so it turns out that this is just Evan's imagination. He doesn't actually do this. Hey, you know what's worse than "it was just a dream fake-out"? "It was just a daydream fake-out." But it does speak to who Evan is as a person. Evan is a person who fantasizes of hurting small animals. Can I just say that having an awful person as a protagonist isn't a bad thing in of itself if the character learns and improves through the course of the story? Evan has only gotten worse with time. So I just can't feel too bad when Evan continues to cross paths with the school bully, a tall, muscular kid named Conan Barber. Yes, that's a Conan the Barbarian joke, and don't worry, if you think it's too subtle, Evan will call him Conan the Barbarian multiple times. A lot of this book is Conan pulling various gags on Evan, tying his shoelaces together, pouring water in his seat, and I know I shouldn't be rooting for this guy, but at least Conan isn't having fantasies of pet murder. So Evan goes to clean Cuddles' cage after school, but in the process, Cuddles gets loosed, bounds around the classroom, climbs up, and jumps out the window. Sure. Hamsters can be surprisingly nimble, but they're not wall-climbing ninja rodents. Evan chases Cuddles outside, busy with student traffic. The poor little guy might get stepped on. That fat hamster isn't getting away this time, Evan decided, jumping up and starting to chase after the creature. I'll catch him if I have to sit on him. A picture flashed into Evan's mind of Cuddles, flat as a pancake after Evan had sat upon him. A little, round, furry hamster rug. Despite his panic, the thought of Cuddles as a rug brought a smile on Evan's perspiring face. Jesus, isn't this Dexter's backstory? Evan chases the hamster across school, but it's Conan who eventually grabs the little critter. He gives it back to Mr. Murphy and convinces Murphy that Evan let the little guy out on purpose. I guess that's injustice, But also, Evan is a little psychopath, so whatever. As Evan is walking home, he's surprised by the sudden appearance from Andy. You know, the girl from the last book. She moved into her aunt and uncle's place in town while her parents are overseas for a year. Goosebumps is really big on this whole child abandonment thing, huh? Anyway, Evan knew she was coming. She sent letters, and you think he'd roll out the red carpet for her arrival. Someone who also knows about Monster Blood, and someone who wants me as a friend. You don't let that go. But Evan's reaction to Andy's arrival is, I kid you not, "What are you doing here? Evan, you are garbage and I hate you." So Andy's here, and she's brought a surprise. The empty Monster Blood can. Andy is a good friend who heard about how everyone at school didn't believe Evan, so she brought this as proof for his story. Evan is all, well, what good is an empty can? Because I don't think he's even heard of the word gratitude. But when they open it, they discover that the once empty can is now half full. It seems that just the tiniest bit of Monster Blood remained in there, and it started to grow again. At this point, I'm fine, continuity-wise. The majority of the cursed Monster Blood was destroyed at the end of the first book, but I can buy that a tiny fragment of it broke off before then and retained the curse, even after Sarah Beth's death. So, Evan was upset that it was just an empty can, and now he's upset that it's not, because don't you remember how dangerous this stuff was, Andy? And yeah, Monster Blood is dangerous, but you don't get to whine about not having Monster Blood, and then get to whine right after about having Monster Blood, Evan, you dingus. So Evan insists that they get rid of it somehow, but that's when Conan shows up. He harasses the two kids for a while, tries to see what they have, but Evan successfully keeps the Monster Blood away from him. After Conan leaves, they bury the can under a tree. Pollution! Do you want Captain Planet? Because this is how you get Captain Planet. We have a small scene of Evan talking to his dad while his dad works on some metalwork art pieces. Evan scoffs at his father's passions, so, another garbage point for him. But in fairness, Dad's art is pretty shitty. There's one piece that he calls the wheel, which is a wheel. Basically the Showcase Showdown wheel from The Price is Right, just a big spinning wheel. Dad mentions that the wheel will be displayed at the art show at the school, meaning it'll be on school premises during school hours. Wink wink, setup, foreshadowing. What doesn't get any setup is Evan trying out for the basketball team. We just get a scene that opens with Evan late for tryouts, and it's so jarring that I thought it might have been another dream sequence. We'd already gotten a handful of those. Evan flashing back to his dog Trigger, eating Monster Blood and becoming huge. But no, Evan just suddenly wants to play basketball. Unfortunately, Conan is also trying out. As Conan dribbled the ball toward him, Evan prepared to defend the basket. Conan drove closer, closer. Evan raised both his hands to block Conan's shot. But to Evan's surprise, Conan let the ball bounce away. In one swift motion, he grabbed Evan by the waist, leaped high in the air, and stuffed Evan into the basket. 3 points! Conan shouted in triumph. What? What was... Does R.L. Stine know how physics works or how high basketball hoops are? Does he really think that a 12-year-old boy could grab another 12-year-old boy who probably weighs 90 pounds, pick him up by the waist, make a 10-foot vertical leap, and stuff the kid butt first into the basket without breaking it? Scottie Pippen couldn't do that shit. Is Conan a Kryptonian? Was he bitten by a radioactive asshole? No? Then how did he do that? Anyway, Evan doesn't make the team, and this entire scene was narratively pointless, as grateful as I am to see Evan get literally dunked on. Now, Evan wants to get back at Mr. Murphy, who has continued to punish Evan for things that are totally Evan's fault, and he gets the idea of feeding just a little bit of Monster Blood to Cuddles, an idea Evan loves. Oh man, can you imagine the look on Mr. Murphy's face when Cuddles balloons to the size of a dog? Yeah, this is a scene about two children planning to poison a small animal. So they go to dig up the can of Monster Blood, but gasp, it's missing. They quickly realize that Conan must have watched them bury it, came back and stole the Monster Blood for himself. What follows is Evan and Andy breaking and entering into Conan's house. Okay, sure, Conan doesn't understand what he has, and Monster Blood isn't the safest thing in the world, so I guess you can justify it, but I'm still putting it on the list of early serial killer warning signs for Evan. They have some close calls, Conan comes home unexpectedly, but they manage to snatch the can and escape. Evan, so ever-changeable, now wants nothing to do with monster blood and suggests they bury it again, and Andy agrees to, only to go to school and feed Cuddles some monster blood anyway. Something that a lot of children's media tries to take into account is imitatable behavior, an idea that if a child is shown something without negative repercussions, they're likely to try it in real life, even if it's actually a very bad thing to do. This book was published in 1994, when slime toys were having a bit of a renaissance with Nickelodeon Gak. Now, bad things happen because Cuddles ate the monster blood. He grows big, he terrorizes the school, but nothing bad happens to Cuddles. He remains healthy and unharmed from the experience. Little kids know that monster blood isn't real, but they might start thinking that feeding silly putty to their sister's guinea pig might be a fun thing to do. This book is irresponsible. So this part of the book gets pretty repetitive, so we're just going to fast forward through it. Evan goes in and out of the classroom. Cuddles is a bit bigger each time, size of a rabbit, size of a dog, busting out of his cage. Hi there, cover art. Mr. Murphy first assumes Evan overfed Cuddles, which is a very dumb thing for anyone to say, let alone a science teacher. But after a while, Murphy is thrilled. World's biggest hamster, will be famous. Then Cuddles gets under the giant big and starts terrorizing everyone, gnawing on things, creating a lot of property damage. I assume leaving bowling ball-sized pellets around the place. It's not good. Evan decides he needs to step up. First, Dad's stupid wheel is in the school. Maybe Cuddles will treat it like a hamster wheel. A hamster wheel is used to give a small animal a place to run and exhaust energy while living in a confined space. Cuddles is no longer in a confined space, he's now god of the universe and will go wherever he pleases. So being presented with a giant, barely functioning hamster wheel made of metal fails to please him, and he destroys it. Evan only has one idea left. He'll eat some of the monster blood himself, grow big, and wrestle the hamster into submission. Thank God the speed of the effects of monster blood are incredibly inconsistent. So Evan grows to about 15 feet in a matter of seconds and tries to wrestle the varmint. But Cuddles is simply too powerful. Under that fur, it's all muscle, baby. But then, suddenly, both Evan and Cuddles start shrinking, and in a few seconds, they return to their normal sizes. Evan didn't do anything, so what happened? Andy was studying the blue monster blood can. Suddenly, she tossed back her dark hair, her brown eyes lit up, and she started to laugh. "It's the expiration date!" she cried happily. "The expiration date on the can! It's today! The monster blood stops working today! The magic is worn out!" "Oh, boo! Ass pull, ass pull, ass pull." I knew the continuity with monster blood was going to break down. I knew that Arlstein couldn't keep the idea of monster blood consistent, and this is where that starts to happen. Let's remind ourselves what monster blood is. Monster blood is a mass-produced slime toy from the 50s or 60s that is not, in of itself, supernatural. A single can of it. This can was cursed by a sexy cat witch, causing it to grow and for anything to eat it to grow. Okay? That's what monster blood is. Expiration dates on food weren't a thing until the 1970s, after this can of monster blood left the factory. But even if we retconned expiration dates to have existed earlier, or for monster blood to have been produced later, that's still decades before the thing expired. Even canned food, which will pretty much last forever if nothing happens to the can, have a printed expiration date for only a few years. Oh, and expiration dates are not an indicator of when a foodstuff automatically goes bad. They're designed for maximum potential flavor. A lot of foods can be eaten and enjoyed well past their expiration date. So what really should happen is that the monster blood drops down to 95% effectiveness, not just outright stops working. Oh, but also, monster blood isn't a food. It's a toy, and toys don't have expiration dates. The only way this makes sense is if sexy cat witch Sarabeth put the expiration date on there when she cursed the can. The toy manufacturer didn't put it there because monster blood was a normal toy. It didn't come out of the factory with evil magic. So was Sarabeth like, okay, it should only take me a few days to kill this kid with the monster blood, but just in case, I should print on the can that my magic wears off after 7 months. Of course, this is the point in the Monster Blood quadrilogy that we forget about Sarabeth entirely and start pretending that Monster Blood was a mass-produced evil magic toy. The book ends with Mr. Murphy giving Evans Cuddles as a gift for saving the school, and totally not because he wants to get rid of the evidence, no sir. And then Andy comes in with, uh-oh, another can of monster blood. It seems her family found one in Europe and mailed it to her, which should be a big deal, as it's not a mass-produced evil toy. My god, this book sucks. At least the first Monster Blood, as bad as it was, had some kind of structure. There was a mystery that had to be solved and an escalating threat. There's no story here. It's just some stuff that happens. Evan gets bullied, and also there's a hamster that grows big, and nobody resolves any of their conflicts. The hamster stuff resolves itself without any kind of setup, and the bully stuff doesn't get resolved at all. The characters don't grow, they don't learn anything. The only real accomplishment is that Evan managed to convince his school about the existence of Monster Blood, which, who cares? All of that is personal validation for Evan, and I don't want Evan to have personal validation. Evan sucks and should be made to learn a lesson. And yeah, it's an awful sequel that may as well retcon the first book out of existence. Why bother continuing the story of Monster Blood if you're going to completely rewrite the nature of the titular Monster Blood? And, not even rewrite it in a clever way. You wanted a Monster Hamster book? Just write a Monster Hamster book! There's nothing stopping you. Follow your bliss. Alright, fine. I'll show you. Here's the part where I rewrite the book into something better. Let's assume everything in the original Monster Blood book happened, as dumb as it was. So the first book ends with evil sexy cat witch Cerebeth destroyed along with the majority of the Monster Blood. This freed Evan's great aunt Catherine, who had been a slave of Cerebeth for 20 years. Catherine actually knows magic. She's not as strong and as powerful as Cerebeth, but she can do a few spells. Evan goes to a new school, gets bullied by Conan. This stuff's mostly the same, but Evan doesn't start blabbering about Monster Blood. He's bullied not because he's telling weird stories, but because he's small and awkward. Bullies don't need a good reason. Well, Evan can't match Conan's strength, but what if he used magic to make him bigger and more athletic? He goes to Catherine's place and asks her for help. She says no, both because magic shouldn't be used for petty matters, and also because she's not that strong enough of a caster. She isn't nearly as powerful as Cerebeth. Hey Evan, since you're here, could you mow the lawn for me? Evan mows the lawn while grumbling under his breath, brings the lawnmower inside the garage, and what does he see on top of some boxes? The supposedly empty can of Monster Blood. When Evan opens it up, it's half full. The majority of the Monster Blood was destroyed, but a tiny fragment was left in the can, and it's starting to regrow. Evan gets an idea. If he eats just a little bit of Monster Blood, he might grow as big as Conan. He talks to Andy, she's behind this idea, and he eats the tiniest pinch of Monster Blood. Overnight, Evan has grown a whole foot, and he has solid muscles. None of his clothes fit, but hey, he can stand up to Conan now. And he does. Conan is a bit shook that this wimpy kid can stand toe-to-toe with him, and Conan backs off. For now. At first, things are great. Evan is tall enough to get on the basketball team. He's becoming more popular. Things are looking up. But power corrupts, and Evan starts blowing Andy off so that he can hang out with the popular kids. And then Conan tries to get back at Evan. He pulls some massive prank that leaves Evan humiliated. Evan goes ballistic. Now, all this time there's been a small voice in the back of Evan's head, one seducing him with power. Hey, be a jerk. All the popular kids are jerk. Go tell the teacher to shove it. Evan slowly recognized the voice of that of Cerebeth. Her magic was in that Monster Blood, and now it runs through Evan's veins. I can show you true magic, Evan. Eat more Monster Blood, Evan, and your power will only grow stronger. I can show you how to be a spellcaster, Evan. And do you know what a spellcaster needs? A living conduit, a familiar. That hamster might make a great familiar. Feed it some Monster Blood, Evan. Evan eats more Monster Blood, feeds some Monster Blood to Cuddles, he grows another foot, he looks like a professional wrestler, and Cuddles is now dog-sized and walking by his side, acting more intelligent and more sinister, and now Evan is casting spells. He's making things levitate, he's opening and closing doors. It's like if Hulk Hogan was playing Carrie. He starts terrorizing the school. Even the teachers won't stand up to him. And Cuddles is even worse. He's chasing after students. He's causing property damage. Things are bad. Evan is now the bully. The tables are turned. Power has turned him into what he's always hated. And he starts bullying Andy, ending their friendship. Andy is upset, crying, but decides, oh yeah, I'll show him. And she takes the full can of Monster Blood and eats all of it. The entire thing. She grows fast, and quickly turns into a 12-foot monster girl, dark energy coming off her, horns sticking out of her forehead. The conflict has escalated. Force met with greater force met with greater force. It's probably a metaphor for nuclear war. I know, I'm a genius. Suddenly, Cuddles the hamster starts talking in Cerebeth's voice. "Screw you, Evan. I've got an even better pupil now." Evan has a moment of clarity, realizes how corrupt he's become, and tries to talk Andy down, tries to rekindle their relationship. And after he gets swatted around a bit, he starts to get through to her. Cuddles screams, "No! I am Cerebeth, the powerful and terrible, and I will rise again!" And Cuddles starts casting magic spells at the two kids. The kids realize they have to use their own dark powers to counter Cerebeth. Evan and Andy versus Cuddles, the possessed hamster. There's a magic fight. The kids win because of the power of love. I'm a super genius. And manage to magically extract the monster blood from all three of their bodies, stuffing it back into the can and magically sealing it. Everyone's back to their original size. Cuddles is put back in his cage. The kids have detention for weeks, but hey, at least they're friends again. As for the monster blood, let's lock it in a box, tie rocks to the box, and toss it into the river. Defeated, but not destroyed. Opening the door for future sequels. Or, we can put an expiration date on the can, that'll solve it. I give Monster Blood 2 a used Taco Bell wrapper out of 10.